What's happening, guys? Welcome to another episode of Valhalla Life. My name is Daine Smit, owner of Dainesmit Corrective Training. Guys, today we got another episode, a little bit different to what we've had in weeks past. We've been focusing a little bit more on kind of sports per se, but today we're going to change our tone a little bit, and we're going to be talking a little bit more on business and how the current situation has affected business. Before that, I just want to introduce my team again. We have Russell Swanepoel, owner at CrossFit Sumba, and guys, he is now a proud father of 2 little girls. So if you are watching at home, a nice big congrats to Mr. Swanepoel. We have Shilo, owner at Strength Society, James Peters Film, the editor master, the Photoshop genius. And then guys, today we have our special guest, a very good friend of ours, influential businessman, Mr. Rory Wilkinson. So welcome, guys. Another episode. Lovely to have all of you on here today. And yeah, let's get into it. So again, I'll just, as mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit of business. So Roro, I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to shoot straight from the hip with the first question coming at you today. And that is directed in that, as a small business owner or even a young businessman, let's say in a larger company, how do you remain focused and optimistic of building your way up to higher positions and roles regardless of the circumstances around you? So I've got a little example here. Let's say now you're starting quite, let's say, low in the company and you're looking to build your way up. Let's say now a colleague gets your desired position before you, okay, that you've really been working hard for, or the world plunges into a flippant pandemic and you are now faced with pay cuts and no advances in the company for the foreseeable future. How do you remain optimistic and kind of like keeping your spirits high?
Daine, thanks, Daine. It's a very good question. Obviously, hugely topical right now, and I think many people find themselves in very similar positions. Certainly, I'm in a actually very similar position at the moment, and certainly in my past career, there've been times when you have felt like you've been on a bit of a treadmill, and sort of wondering, sure, is there any real future here or not? And certainly, I think a couple of things that have helped me in the past, and one is fundamentally you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe. Every person I know has got value to add. You need to believe in that value that you add and can contribute, and firmly take that in and make sure that you're able to demonstrate that value when the opportunity presents itself. I think critical thing is obviously remaining patient. It's pointless getting stressed out or worried about things that are largely out of one's control. So to even to my kids, guys, if it's out of your control, there's no sense in having sleepless nights about these things. What will be will be. What you can control is how you plan for different scenarios and how you react to different scenarios. Those things you can control. So focus on those. Focus on planning for different scenarios, different outcomes, and critically, you want to behave and your outward action needs to be around success. So envisaging what success is, and everything that you do and plan is around that. Your mentality has to be obviously a positive one, and planning for that best outcome. So in short, Daine, it's obviously tough at times, but you've got to put your head down. You carry on doing what you know you can do. And ignoring all the noise, and as I said, critically, you got to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you. But it's not a unique situation, Daine, for sure. And unfortunately, it comes to each individual. What they can control, they must control and manage.
Yeah, I like what you say there when you talk about patience. I know, especially in a time like this where many of us have had to kind of adapt really, really drastically from our usual day jobs, and with restrictions being in place, patience has been something that we've probably had to learn a little bit more. I know for myself, part of my kind of income focused a lot on dealing with people, and when that was taken away, we had to figure out new ideas, and you had to be patient in order to think, you know what, okay, how am I going to make this work? And if I try this idea, look, it's not going to necessarily just shoot and be really successful, but I need to have the patience in order to potentially see the benefits down the line, for it to bear fruit a little bit down the line. I can't just expect, you know what, I'm going to try an idea 1 week, and by next week I'm going to be a millionaire.
Results.
It's I like that idea of, you know what, we just have to keep patient, and even if it takes a foreseeable amount of time, it's that continuing to believe in it, believe in yourself, believe in the idea. And if you can see, if you for one can believe in it, and you can make other people see that, look, there is benefit, and get them to really believe in that idea, look, it'll come eventually. So that's a really nice way to kick off. I think what we'll do is let's move straight to Shilo, and then potentially bring back a question a little bit later. So Shilo, over to you, man.
Rory, just listening to your answer, I think what's also valuable, three of us on this call are coaches, and what you said, I think you can apply to an athlete training for something, which I think is really cool. For me, I want to know, as a small business owner, how do you see smaller businesses staying afloat during this time where, and let's be realistic, there seems to be no end. Suddenly, as a small business, you're turning over X amounts, it's been fantastic, and suddenly there's no clear sort of, way forward inside. Is it scalability? Do you try to think out the box? What would be how would Rory Wilkinson tackle this?
So again, Shilo, it's a question that I think a lot of people are grappling with right now, and I mean there are it is a unique circumstance. I mean, you go back 3-4 months, 6 months, and I don't think anyone could have envisaged where things are now, and critically, I don't believe it's possible for a small business on its own to stay afloat. I think it's critical that their whole value chain needs to come to the party. Needs to be a joint approach. Whether it's from a landlord, who's deferring rental, or even reducing rental for a time, or even a bank. And I'm not too sure how the banks have responded. Certainly I know landlords have been looking at reducing rentals and rent deferrals. I'm not sure how banks have responded, but obviously they're the ones at the top of the food chain. Ideally, they're the ones need to be taking the lead to enable everyone down the value chain to push that down. So I don't think a business on its own is able to deal with it on its own. At the moment, obviously, cash is king. So businesses in the past, obviously had like profit motives. Now I think it's really around, survival from a liquidity point of view, and being hugely conservative from a cash perspective. But that, as I said, it does take the whole value chain, from the banks, and it does come to your clients and customers, and obviously engaging with them and communicating with them. And again, it comes to the first question around, if you've got value to add, if your clients and customers see value, then I see no reason why they wouldn't support you in whatever way they can to make sure that actually you don't disappear into another folded business. But look at Charlotte, it's not an easy situation. And as Daine was saying, I think now people are learning to, or having to force to adapt and be innovative and try new things. But at the same time, I don't think you should not lose your essence of your value that you add, or your service. You've got to keep the core of that, but obviously, how you sell that or how you market that, will need to adapt and need to find innovative ways of getting your service out there.
Yeah, I hear you. Would you say that looking at trying to get your service out there, I mean, some people come up with an idea overnight and they strike gold. Do you think that it's one of those cases where, you need to try a whole lot of different things and find out what works? But I mean, in saying that, you could find that the business goes under. Or do you think you look for one thing and really try to drive that home as much as possible? I know it's quite open-ended, but how would you tackle it?
Look, I mean, I don't think, to find a whole new business concept right now, is hell of a difficult, hugely risky, obviously. So, if you've got an established business that has value and people see value in it, as I said, you've got to focus on that core and obviously look at innovative ways, alternative ways of getting people to continue to see value and hence, contribute from a financial perspective and enable you to carry on. So certainly don't want to throw out, the baby with the bathwater, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if the worst comes to worst, you've got to try, brand new things. That's what you've got to do. But as I said at the beginning there, I don't believe it's something you can do on your own. You need the support of your whole value chain to keep you going. And hopefully in these times, there is a lot more empathy and understanding, from the bankers and landlords at the top of the food chain, all the way through to your customers.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that, again, if I relate this to us, I think the communities that we've built and that have been really supportive over the last sort of 2 or 3 months have been really awesome. And I think, again, as a small business owner, I think that's also what drives you to keep pushing content, keep offering the service that you do. Obviously it's a little bit different, but I think everyone's in that boat, and it keeps you going.
Look, I think it is important for you to remain relevant and let your customers see you or hear you. I think as soon as you start to not be active or not engaging with your customers in any way, I think you will struggle to remain viable and struggle for people to see value. So I think it is critical, particularly for what we're talking about, sort of fitness, health, to remain relevant and front of mind in people's minds. Certainly agreed. The initiatives, let's say that Russell and CrossFit Sumba are doing, and yourself, I think, are hugely positive, but hugely necessary. And Daine, particularly, I think you're doing an awesome job at innovating, thinking, looking at alternative ways of feeding your customers and your clients, keeping them active and involved. I think that's the critical part.
100% agreed.
And hopefully, I think hopefully sanity will prevail and government will unlock the rest of the economy, which it seems a bit bizarre that it isn't. But
like golf.
Like golf, yeah. Well, I mean, I was thinking about it, if government thought like a medical aid, what's the difference between medical and health and fitness? Medical aid see it one and the same. So if you're dealing with health and fitness, you actually resolve medical issues. But government, for some reason, sort of split it, which again makes no sense.
100%. I know. Just from me, from a personal point of view, with stages of the economy being unlocked and exercise times, changing, etc. I know that going from that hard lockdown into that little window, there was a whole host of people that have, come at me, after a week going, listen, I think I went too hard in that first week. I need to turn it down, or I need to have a look at a courtyard mobility session, and that's now becoming part of their program because Karen from accounts can't walk because she went too hard in week one. so I think I 100% agree with that. I think we're going to move to JMO, who's going to fire some questions at you.
I was actually going to say, if you can go, Russ, and then I'll go after you.
Sorry, I don't know. Crimson.
No, it was that way, and then yeah, I'd rather go after Russ if that's right.
Cool.
Okay.
Hey Ross, how you doing?
Good, Russ. Yeah, not as good as you, being a new dad, hey? Proud father.
Oh yeah, they're all still locked up in jail at the moment, but we'll get them back sooner or later. Enjoying my quiet time. Ross, I wanted to sort of dig into your maybe slightly different track from health and fitness, but what so the track of what should business for so long, let's start here. For so long, business have sort of stuck their mind in physical location, size, area, sort of upkeep of building, all sorts of things like that. This dramatic shift in the last 8 weeks has really thrown a spanner in that works, and people have adapted, they've changed the way they think. I know for me personally, I've had to rethink how I see the physical space that we have, for example. What is your opinion or your guide going forwards, do you think, for people or businesses rather that are looking at rental space, given that we've got now a huge acceleration into work from home or all those sorts of things? How do you kind of see that whole dynamic playing out?
That's very interesting, Russell. As a professional town planner, space is what sort of guides me. But there's no doubt that physical space, I think, for the first time for centuries, is almost a new metric. It's become the essence of everything, almost. I think people are starting to understand the importance of space for them. What can they do in that space? How much space do they need? What is the quality of that space? I think it's having fundamental impacts and implications on all sorts of sectors of the economy. As you said, work from home. It started to get some momentum going, but suddenly, I think obviously it's taken off. So you can imagine the impacts from an office market perspective, where corporates having let's say multiple offices suddenly realize, we no longer need those offices. People actually are more productive at home. They don't have to travel into work, etc. So people again are reassessing the space from a different perspective. So I think whilst office sector as a whole is going to have a hugely impacted, I think the residential sector is also going to be impacted in a different way. The people, I think, in the past, maybe if you look at the growth of Umhlanga, was built around the commercial node, Gateway, Lelusa Ridge office estate, and people then migrated to be closer to those opportunities. I think what this pandemic is saying is that people are going to value their individual spaces more, and hence, where they live and how they live and the lifestyle and environments they live in are going to become more important, because you can now do everything remotely. So that's certainly going to have a major impact on the whole property market. And from a, I think critically, I suppose, Russ, from a small business or the sectors that we're talking about now, I guess the key question is, does my client or customer need space? Do they need the space and does my business need the space to function and be viable? That's the first question that companies are going to ask. And as we said, at the moment, cash is king, and the focus is going to be on saving any rand that you can. So any overhead space certainly is going to be one of the first things that companies look to reducing. And so from an office point of view, again, as I said, it's going to be one of the first things that starts to be felt from a market perspective. So I think both investors and landlords are going to have to look at space in a different way, but certainly business owners as well are going to have to look at space, I think, from a customer and client perspective. So what does the customer or client need or expect from a space point of view? Is it safe from a health and hygiene point of view? Are they able to adequately do what they need to do? So I guess you can look at it in two ways. Your current space, you can reduce the number of people. So that, let's say the current shops, etc., you have a queue outside, you only let in a certain number of people. So you retain your current space, but you have less people, but then obviously for longer periods, let's say more classes, fewer people, or you effectively, could halve your space. But again, again, it's going to have an impact on numbers and length of classes, etc. So it is very business specific, but there's no doubt that people, businesses, customers, and investors are looking at space in a very different way now. And even I think if they find a vaccine tomorrow, I think what people have learned and how they've adapted is irreversible. I think the work from home, remote working is going to remain and probably going to be more entrenched. E-commerce, I think, is just starting to get its momentum even now, and that's going to accelerate even further. I think people are adapting and finding that they can do more from home, whether it's praying, studying, learning, recreating, gym. They can do that at home and are increasingly doing that. So I think the critical thing from your perspective, let's say, is guys, you can't do everything at home, and you need to come into, let's say, a gym or a hairdresser, to get some things done. And I think at the heart of it, people inherently need to socialize and engage with people. So it's all very well talking like we are now, over social media, but people don't draw energy from digital platforms. Screen. Draw energy from real people and emotions and relationships directly. So I certainly think there is a place for physical space requirements, from a business perspective.
So I don't ever think that, for example, just using a gym as a setup, like I don't ever think that we will compromise on having a physical location. I think that as you picked up, we very much need that physical contact, and I think that is the value that such gyms like ours, we'll call it CrossFit Gym, Strength Society, and then we really connect people, and that's incredibly valuable. So I don't ever think that we would not want that physical meeting space, but I'm definitely also playing in my mind the metrics of, like, how much space do we need? Do we need more space to accommodate more people at a time, given sort of the likelihood that there will be physical distancing requirements or concerns going forwards? The problem with that is that it definitely drives up your overheads, which and this is sort of the crux of my thinking at the moment, and my argument is that I don't necessarily think that bigger is better, because it will likely have too much of an impact on your overheads and your ability to run a business, which leads me to the next point, was how dramatically do you think the dynamic will now shift in terms of negotiations and relationships between landlords / property investors and tenants? Because I definitely, it's great to have a space, but I feel as a tenant, I want to say more empowered going forwards, that I have a stronger right to negotiate better terms given the crisis that we've had, and that I feel almost that the physical locations, I don't know how to put this, should be grateful for tenants, rather than using property to gear other property off my rent type thing. I don't know if I've put that accurately enough.
No, I think you have, Russ, and I think that is certainly going to be an issue that investors, developers, landlords are grappling with. I think there's no doubt new development, new building, I think is going to take strain for the short term. I think, as soon as people start to see the impacts of significant reduction in demand for office, for example, existing office owners of buildings are going to have to think, oh, hold on, do we convert it to residential or other markets? So I think certainly new building development is going to, let's say, slow. Although, as I said, residential I think is going to become more important. Although developers in a residential are going to probably have to reassess space. How much space do people get, and common space, and is there enough space for people to move around and just recreate on their own, etc. But I do agree with you, particularly where you've got a tenant who's running a business that needs space. I think the landlord, I agree, would say, sure, I'm thankful to have a tenant who actually has a business that needs space and can pay rental, as opposed to non-essential retail shops that haven't been able to open until now, haven't been able to pay rent. So obviously has a huge impact on those landlords and investors, etc. So in theory, as you say, the landlords should be certainly doing what they can to retain the tenants that have businesses that need space. But as I said, there's no doubt that those spaces need to be reassessed and reviewed and updated to make sure that they accord with the regulations and requirements, and probably more importantly, people's perceptions and people's thoughts and thinking about how much space is good or bad for them as individuals. And I'd certainly agree that doubling space is probably not the way to go. Certainly, I would consolidate the space that you have and make it function as effectively as possible, without obviously impacting on you're going to have to reduce classes. I think that's a given. You've got to find that happy medium, I think. But ideally, I think you as a tenant should, like it's a buyer's market now, in the residential market, equally, I think it's more tenants market, in sort of rental.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's it's just a hell of an interesting sort of equation at the moment, trying to figure out what is, as a percentage of your turnover, what do you actually need your rental to be at in order to be making a profit. Obviously every business is different, but I know there's a lot of gyms out there struggling dramatically with the situation, and I don't know the details of their struggles, but off the top of my head, it can only be a few things. It can only be that they've entered into really extensive equipment purchases or overheads on loans and those sorts of things that they're still paying back, in conjunction with having significantly high rental overheads. And the more you can control those two things, the more viable, like you say, you can keep the cash flow in your business, and that's what will keep you alive.
Yeah, but that's a perfect example, Russ, of the people up the value chain have to come to the party. It's impossible, for gym business that effectively getting limited opportunities to increase revenue or get the rentals through, and you still expect it to pay all your loans and overheads. It's got to be a common approach to making sure that you retain the tenant. Property isn't a short-term game. So the one benefit I think that a tenant has is hopefully the investor, the landlord, isn't in it for a short, they're in it for the long term. So to be foolhardy and push a tenant out for the sake of a few months, to me doesn't make sense.
I would have to agree with that. That it makes no sense to give away a revenue stream just because you want your 12 months worth of rent. And I think that's the very interesting balance between people who have been able to work a lower rental or a decreased rental and then add on, say, to the end of your lease, the months that were compromised, as opposed to engagements where landlords have said, no, we'll give you a break now, but you've got to load this into the remainder of your 12 months or 36 months, whatever. It just makes no sense to think like that. That's a double negative. I mean, nobody can afford on a lower revenue stream once this all opens up. Nobody can afford to then have less money coming in and a higher overhead. It would, for me, be a very short-term line of thinking, which I think, going into what you already said, would require a slight shift in thinking from the investor's perspective.
Yeah, no, hopefully they've got, they should be looking at the longer term. A year, 6 months to a year in a property lifespan is nothing. It really isn't. But I mean, obviously each circumstance is different.
Thanks, Rory.
Rory, I wanted to actually ask you more about how businesses are probably going to change the way that, obviously, their employees are going to be coming to work. I know we sort of touched on this, but we were speaking with a good friend last night, and he was saying how his business has changed the work week for him. So he no longer obviously needs to come in on a full 5-day work week. He can now just pop into office maybe for 2 days of the week, and the remaining 3 days he can work from home, which he said is a huge benefit in his lifestyle, because not only is he still very productive with his work, but he can now engage with his family a lot more than he could previously, because he's not rushing off to work at the early hours of the morning or not coming back from work at the late hours of the evening. He's just got more time to engage with them. Also, the expenses now spent on travel, especially from the business point of view, where they pay for their employees' fuel or AA rate on mileage, is significantly lower, because there is a lot less traveling, because a lot of the meetings that would usually take place physically or on location or on site are now done via a video call. And the same thing goes through actual air travel. They're now saying, look, obviously domestic travel is quite limited at the moment, but in the cases when maybe it gets more relaxed, they're going to say now, well, look, you don't really need to fly to Cape Town or Joburg or whatever it is, because these situations can now just really take place over video. So I just wanted to get your thinking on this, and do you think it's, say, after all of this, if that will continue, or if it's or if you think it'll taper out and go back to kind of normal ways?
Look, I think fundamentally, Jomo, I think people have become accustomed to doing more remotely and from home, and I think that is irreversible. That's going to continue and probably expand even more. Even if they find a vaccine tomorrow, I don't see that trend changing. I think if they find a vaccine tomorrow, they probably would have a more of a go back to the same old from a rest of the economy and how you go about your day-to-day operations, and would obviously have a impact on places like gyms, etc., where the necessity and phobia around space is probably not as significant, let's say.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Rory. I really appreciate that. That was some insightful stuff.
I just wanted to jump in or follow Jomo's question, because I think he picked up on something quite interesting, in that a lot of companies are able to save a lot of money through not paying out, for example, travel expenses, and reducing the size of their fixed office spaces, and those sorts of things, which leads me to think, or leads me to ask a question maybe, Rory, is that with this, I don't want to say extra money, because there's obviously a period of recovery, etc., but with this sort of extra cash flow likely that's going to be experienced in 6 to 12 months or even 18 months down the line, and the shift in habits of businesses, do you feel that there will be people or businesses will just stick with, okay, cool, we're just going to count extra profits now? Or do you feel that they will reinvest that difference in cash flow into, say, more human capital, where we don't need to fly somebody to Cape Town every week? Let's rather just hire one person. We won't hire an office. Let's rather hire another Cape Town team, for example, and increase the amount of people in different locations to a greater or lesser degree, sort of to make sure that their footprint is felt in a wider area rather than being fixed in, like we said earlier, one big location. I mean, it's just a question that came to me now, so maybe I haven't formulated that well, but do you sort of have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, yeah, as you say, I think a lot of businesses are going to take some time, you know, to sort of recover and catch up and make up for lost ground. So I think, you know, most companies are probably you know, battering down the hatches, you know, obviously being usually conservative when it comes to cash, and you know, obviously trying to, you know, get back or win back you know, cash that has been leaking out, you know, over this period. You know, going forward though, you know, certainly I think it's a time, you know, when companies can become much more efficient and much more effective. Whether that will result in them, you know, employing more people, you know, spread around, you know, regionally, or simply, you know, taking that money to book. You know, I guess it depends on the business and the industry. But my sense is probably, you know, I think a lot of companies, businesses will start to invest more fundamentally in technology, and making, you know, the remote working, e-commerce, you know, currency issues, you know, more fundamentally part of their business. You know, how can they operate even more effectively and more safely and more securely via, you know, remote working? So I think, you know, there's probably, you know, a lot of money still needs to be invested by a lot of companies in making that a whole secure network and secure environment, that will satisfy, you know, every naysayer around security issues, let's say, or confidentiality issues, etc. So yeah, I think probably that's where, you know, companies probably start to look at the tech side of things, and upgrading, you know, those platforms and networks to make it even more effective and more secure, I think, and more sort of, you know, confidential, let's say, operating environment from a digital perspective.
Awesome.
Rory, I've just got a question here. Sorry, just before, if any of us have another question after this. It just got me thinking, and I know this is just off the top of my head now. You yourself have a young daughter, up and coming in the world, obviously still in school, going to be moving into varsity one of these days. And my question is, when it comes to business and kind of getting jobs, or your first job, there's a typical type of saying, is that it's not what you know, it's who you know and how you can apply yourself to any given task. Now, for some people, I mean, go and study 6-7 years, and then, I mean, your first kind of couple months out of studying, you have nowhere to go, you don't know anyone, and you might struggle to get a job. Or it's a case of you put a little bit of work in, you do a little bit of studying, but then kind of just get straight into a job and you find your way along kind of your given career path. What would be your advice now, saying, let's say, to you, a young up-and-coming businessman or woman, on what do you believe is the better kind of viewing? Or if there's kind of, they both go hand in hand?
No, I fundamentally think you need a bit of both, Daine. So, you know, you certainly don't want to put off, you know, getting the theory behind you, you know, whether it's degrees or diplomas or whatever else, but the theoretical background to solidify your base. But critically, I think at the same time, you've got to put yourself out there. I think each person has got to take the effort and engage with their market, with the people in their chosen field. You go and speak to people, go and see if you can do intern work or help out for whatever it is, whether it's like competitions or whatever they can do to become involved in that industry, to get to know the people. As you say, it's not what you know, it's who you know, but it's pointless if you know everyone, but you've got nothing behind you. I think you do need something behind you. Obviously that doesn't apply to everyone for sure. You get natural entrepreneurs who are just automatically business and they don't need anything behind them. They've got a business and they've got an idea and they can hit it. But certainly, going to study for 5 years and not engaging and putting yourself out there and involving yourself with the personalities and contacts in your business or in that field, I think equally is going to get you nowhere. So certainly, studying at university, whatever, theory certainly doesn't assist when it comes to real world and how the real world operates and what the real world is looking for. You only understand that and get to know that when you interact with people in that industry, in the chosen field. So, certainly knowing people is critical, but as I said, I think, with a solid foundation and base behind you, is probably the way to go.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was just something that I just kind of wanted to ask, and it'll be nice just for the young guys out there leading into the working world just to hear. So yeah. Any of our other guys, any of our other guest speakers in-house speakers want to have another question at Roro?
I've got one, not obviously too business related, but talk us through a normal day for Rory Wilkinson. We spoke about routine, etc., being quite critical during this period. But what does your normal day look like?
I think, Charlotte, I think in these times, surreal times, when I think it's very easy to adopt sort of a laissez-faire attitude, it very quickly can become sort of a negative, unproductive environment. I think critical to that is getting into a routine and working through that routine, in a framework, but obviously with scope and room to change. But so obviously I prefer doing my workouts early in the morning, getting them over and done with, and that seems to be where I've got the most energy. But certainly getting up, and I prefer to get up earlier rather than later. The later I get up, the more flippin' miserable I am, because I feel, I've wasted part of the day. I like to get up early and get things going, and get things done. My new thing is now my ice bath, the swimming pool, flipping ice cold, but it's fantastic for recovery. And then, obviously, depending on, generally, the rest of the morning is taken up with meetings or calls, sort of business side of things. Obviously, the lockdown enables you to have lunch with your family, obviously coffee with your family as well. And then generally the afternoons is a case of, depending on what the various family members are doing, might watch something on TV or just chill out outside or in the lounge. And then we are able to prepare dinner together again as a family. So it's a very simple day, but fundamentally, get up early, get your workout done, and have a bit of a recovery, and that sets you up for the rest of the day.
Awesome. I think I know for me, getting up early is something that I've always done, and week 1, week 2, I struggled with that. But as soon as I started doing that again, I found I was actually a lot more productive, especially with getting actual work done. I found the earlier I get my brain going, the more work I can push out. Because you get to, for me personally, you get to about midday and I'm nowhere.
Yeah, start thinking about your swing again, eh?
Exactly. Set up the little net outside, hit a few balls.
No, but it's good. Even that, put that point into your routine. Happy days. If you've got certain hobbies like that, just fit them in and work around
Where
it.
you can, yeah. No, 100%.
I'd
Daine,
like to say
you?
I'm putting in my double under practice, but yeah, not really. I'll blame my knee on that.
Rory, we on a previous show we chatted about 1% and how if you attempt to be 1% better than the previous day, you'll eventually grow and get better and get better and better and better. So you just got to get one double under. Just today, just one double under. And tomorrow you can get to, even if you want to do it weekly, one double under every day for the week, and then progress.
So I have progressed my salt barking, that's for sure.
Here's actually a real question. Would you rather be able to do 100 double unders or have them develop a vaccine?
Sure.
No.
Who's listening? I didn't even have to respond to that. I know you folks know the answer for sure as well. After 4 years of trying, come on. Yeah. Daine, so can I just make one more comment?
Yes.
I think, and what I was going to say, I sort of forgot. I think it is critical, particularly in the space that you guys operate, is give your client and customer the opportunity to comment or respond and to input on your service, on how you're going about it, in a way that sort of people can give it to you as they see it. So in non-threatening, ideally in a way, that can be objective, and then critically, then I think listen to what they say. And you can only listen to what they say if you're giving them opportunity to comment and respond. And I think it almost needs to be like a formal thing. Hopefully it can be done in a almost incognito type of way. But I think that because that's who you're appealing to, or that's who you're serving. And I think it might be useful, just to get people's ideas and views and what they would like or not like, that you can start to bring some of those things in. I think going back to previous questions, I think never stop innovating or making small changes as you go forward down the line. Keeping your core focus absolutely core, and that's it. But adding on bits and pieces on the sides, again, particularly during these times, you don't want things to become too sterile or too regimental. I think changing things up a bit, I think would be a good thing.
Absolutely.
But I'll just throw that out there for what it's worth.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. It is definitely something that we as small businessmen or kind of business owners need to look at to always keep, and getting back to the answer to my question, always have to keep appealing to customers and staying relevant to your target audience. So definitely something that we can all take to heart. So again, guys, thank you so much for coming on today. Guest speakers or in-house speakers, been awesome. And then to our guest speaker today, Rory Wilkinson, influential businessman, double under hopeful one of these days. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ro. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we can get you back in future to kind of pick up again on what's happening in the world of business. Hopefully once this pandemic makes its way to a bit of a back seat, we can get you back on and chat a little bit more. So thank you so much. And
thank you, Daine. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Guys, that's all for Valhalla Life today.
Pleasure.
We'll be back next week for another episode. Until then, enjoy, and we'll see you then.